Have 6 o'clock, get started. Call this meeting of the steering committee to order. Looks like we have everyone with us tonight, except Mr. Gully. Maybe he'll join us here in a little bit. I'd like to welcome you out tonight. Don't think we have a whole lot to cover. First item of business is to review the minutes from the January 4th meeting and any corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes. Mr. Ford, I have a motion to approve by Mr. Ford and a second by Mr. Harsh. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They are approved. Tonight, we just hear from the mayor, see what's got going on, what's coming up. We do, I guess, some of the things carried forward was the RFQ on the jail. Mayor, have we prepared that or sent that out yet?
Haven't sent it out. I got feedback from CTAS about some changes that need to be made to it. I'm making those, and I got to send it to Mr. Beller for his approval. Yeah, he and I did discuss it yesterday, so that's the next step. I should have it done, ready to send to Mr. Beller either tomorrow or the day after. So Jim Hart from CTAS and another gentleman that works with him made several comments, and they put them in 2 different Word documents. So I got to go back and forth between them to see the comments. And then also William Wall and Bob Bass at Tennessee Corrections Institute reviewed it as well.
Glad to know that's proceeding. We need to get that out there so we can get some hard numbers and get this process started for sure. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a personnel committee meeting Thursday, starting at 6 o'clock. We want to have plenty of time to discuss the wage study and the new personnel policy changes. We certainly, even if you're not on that committee, you would need to avail yourself to try to be there if you could. I think it would maybe help with some of the questions later on. The more of the commissioners that we could have there. Certainly want everybody to feel welcome at that. Sir. Budget, I'm sorry, budget. It's already been through personnel on the personnel policy wording, the wage study. We needed budget and finance to look at. Yes, budget and finance. That's covering the wage study. Yes, that's the main purpose of that meeting. I don't think we necessarily have to limit it to just that, but I think that's a big enough topic that it's going to take pretty much the whole hour or 2. I didn't want us to run out of time or start getting late on us if we started at 7. So we tried to get it on some previous meetings, and we just had so many things that we just ran out of time before we could get into something that complicated. Mayor, you want to add anything on that one?
No, there will be a couple of, if not on the wage study itself, but the personnel policy. There's been a couple of issues that came up that was not addressed in the personnel policy. And after speaking with Mr. Beller, he thinks we need to make a proposal to put those into policy. One of them is there's been an issue with a pay rate change and it being made retroactive. He said we need to get away from that practice. And so we need to put something in the personnel policy for that. And then there was some language that Burris Thompson came up that was kind of a little bit more descriptive of the wage study, talking about when you do the employee reviews, that they be done at the end of the year and be due in January if they're going to put raises in the budget. But as far as the compensation study you're looking at, I don't really have any feedback on that. I think it's pretty cut and dry as to what their proposal is. I will say the thing we need to consider, or the budget committee needs to consider probably at their regular meeting, is I believe Mr. Thompson called it cost of labor adjustment. What percentage are we looking at this year? Are you looking, I know there's some counties, all the counties I've spoken to, they all do it drastically different ways. There's no real one set way to do it. So I would just suggest start thinking about that and see what direction we want to go, because that'll be on top of whatever adjustments are made in the pay scale.
What we're running into right now, and y'all, I'm sure most of you are aware of it if you're not, what we're talking about is not just a cost of living adjustment, but a cost of wage, in that so many jobs are available now at a higher wage. People are trying to court people away from their existing jobs. So we feel like we need to address that, because it's really hitting us hard as far as trying to replace these people that are jumping ship for a better paying job. And to try to ebb that tide, we're going to have to do something about it. We can't wait till the end of the year to deal with that. We need to be looking at that right away. Several of the things in the wage study is, it's once we, I guess, if we embrace the idea that's put forth in it, as far as a automatic step type raises, is the implementation. Whether you're going to do it right away, you're going to do it in the next budget, you're going to do half of it this year, half of it next year. I think that's where we're going to get more bogged down than on the actual step scale, is trying to figure out if we're going to implement it first of all, and then the how, because we do have options, and we need to weigh all those options and try to figure out what is going to be best for our employees, but also best for our taxpayers. So we have some complicated and weighty decisions that we're going to have to make to put this thing together. And that's one reason I'd ask you all to really try to put some time into it, of reading it, some thought. Jot your questions down where you have areas of concern or questions, so that we can kind of try to address those. This is something that is not new. It's something that we've been trying to work on and look at for several years now. And really, we finally have some hard facts and figures to be able to look at this in an objective way, I believe, in a factual way, for sure. Mayor, was there anything else that you needed to let us know about? I know you had mentioned the situation with possible grant on some traffic lights, and I've had several questions on the intersection up here and some of those improvements. Can you just kind of give us an update on where some of these projects are at this point? That would be very helpful, I think.
Yes, sir. The intersection, I believe you're talking about at McMurray Boulevard and Broadway, the four-way intersection by the First National Bank and Mexican Grilled Cheese. That was scheduled to go to bid in December 10th. I've sent an email out to TDOT to see to verify if it was bid out or let out for bid on, December 10th, and I haven't received any response. But last time I talked to them, they said that was a hard date, that it was going to be bid out. So I assume, going by their word, it was let out for bid, but I'm still waiting for confirmation on that and to see who the winning bidder was. And once that project is approved and they start construction, it's scheduled for 18-month construction time, and that's complete improvement of the intersection. That's turning lanes in all four directions, new traffic lights and everything like that. So it's going to be a completely new intersection. And the project's zone is not just at the intersection itself. It actually goes all the way down to GNL Garden Center. That's all the project area. So that's going to be kind of a lengthy project, but I think it's going to certainly help traffic there. And one thing helps traffic there is the other grant we applied for, and that is the traffic signal modernization program. And that is because our traffic lights there at the intersection of McMurray and Andrews are, I think, the control boxes from the early 1980s. It cannot be programmed to do some of the things you can now with traffic signal timing, such as you can time it so that it's had longer green going westbound in the morning to alleviate traffic, and then longer green in the afternoon heading eastbound to alleviate traffic. But you got to have a more up-to-date equipment to do that. So we did put in for that. That'll be new lights, new control box, and it should include a green arrow turning for the turning lane off of McMurray onto Andrews, turning left by the Village Pizza. So we put that in there as well as a battery backup system in case the power failure, if there's a disaster or something, it'll have a battery backup for a certain amount of time. And we did get to the final round of that grant, but they're supposed to come out and do a site visit, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Larry, do we have any cost in that? I said, do we have any cost in that?
No, both of those projects, the intersection improvement, that is 100% a TDOT project, and the traffic signal modernization, as long as we stayed under the tent, there was up to $100,000, 100% state, and our project's like $72,000, and that is including $10,000 for the battery backup, which we didn't originally have that, but after some of the disasters we've had lately, we've had the lights go out there and it's created issues, so we did make sure to include that battery backup.
Sometime back, you mentioned something about, I don't know if it's a grant or what, about they wanted to change a lot of the signs in the county. Is that still on go or not?
Yes, sir. That's the wayfinding grant, and that's to put signs more in the downtown area and the monument signs out of town. That's a economic development, community development thing. Right now, we're working with TDOT and our consultants on that because TDOT has standards you have to meet. So we're working with TDOT on that. And I think we're coming down towards what the final design is going to be, but we got to work with TDOT and make sure it meets their specifications. And that is a Department of Economic and Community Development grant through their three-star program.
Do know this project on the intersection up here has been ongoing. Mayor Carmen and myself met with Senator Hale and some TDOT representatives when he was in office. That's how far back we've been working on this. I'm just glad to see that we finally got it to where it's at. One thing I think people may fail to realize when you hear the 18-month thing is it's not so much, there's going to be a lot of drainage type issues, a lot of large tiles and things to have to be put in there that is going to take quite a bit of time. It's not just the roadway, it's all the surfacing and things, that structure that has to go in under it for stormwater and things of that nature. So if you hear that 18-month timeline, there's a lot of work that will be going on up there. A lot of work, a lot of digging, and a lot of rock, and that just takes a little bit longer. Yeah, so that's one reason it's probably going to take a little longer. Mr. Clerk.
Yes, I have a question on the intersection. Will the contractors be responsible for moving the water, the gas, the sewer, or will it fall back on the county? Contractor has to do it all?
That's my understanding of what we had. Mayor, can
My understanding is they worked with the utilities. They did a team meeting and all that stuff, and they worked with the utilities. So and my understanding is they'll be moving all that. I think we went out there and marked it off, but I think they'll be up to them to make sure that that's all moved. I'll check with Mr. McFarland and them to make sure my interpretation is correct. But in that meeting, if I remember them talking about it, they were wanting to know where the lines and stuff were. So I believe that's on them.
That's what they had indicated to us. Yes. Mr. Ford.
Mayor, I listened to the governor's speech last night, and he's putting a lot of money into infrastructure and bridges and blah, blah, blah. What's the last you've heard on the River Bridge out here?
They put a notice in the Vidette, I believe I want to say November, for public comment. They were going to amend their 3-year transportation plan to insert that project into fiscal year 2023. So that's the last I've heard on it. I know they've been out to site, they've done archaeological digs. I believe Mr. McFarland's been out there consulting on the water lines in that area and other things. So it's moving along. And last I saw is that they proposed to put it in for fiscal year 2023. So I think it's much sooner than what we initially anticipated.
From what I remember on that, and I don't know where I got it, but somebody said, or maybe come up in a meeting, it would probably take them 2 years to build that bridge. Is that anywhere in the ballpark? That's what I was thinking.
I think the timeline I heard, now, again, this is going off memory. I think the timeline I heard for the entire project was 3 years.
3.
And I know the total project is now $79 million. And that bridge, I believe, is going to be either one of the longest spans in Tennessee or the longest span in Tennessee. So it is going to be a monumental project.
It's not just across the river. it comes way on out the way I understand it.
Yeah, and it's gonna have a long drop to it because it's coming off that bluff, which is
That's
much
right.
higher than it is on the other side. So it's gonna have a long gradual decline, and that's the reason
It's
for how
quite a
long it is.
drop coming off that bluff there. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but it's got to be a whole bunch.
No, they've contacted us about, wanting to know about putting sewer lines, water lines, those type things in the project across the bridge. We've been talking to them about that. And, that's something that we're exploring. Whether we go ahead, whether they're hooked to anything, it would behoove us to do that as a part of the project so that we would have it ready to span that bridge if we want to, but it would help us quite a bit with water to be able to loop those two sides of the river together and not be dependent on just the one crossing down at the other bridge. So we're looking at that, the water department and the water board. That's one thing that we've been actively trying to get information on, of trying to be able to include that in the project. And I think they assured us that we could, and they would cover, was it $1 million, $1.2 million of the cost of doing that or something?
I think what Mr. White said is if you divide it up and do water and sewer separately, I think each one of them was up to 1.3.
Okay.
So certainly if we do the water, it'll give us a second line out to Providence. And if one line goes down, you just turn some valves and you got water service coming in on the other line.
Certainly, if it wasn't something that was imminent, they wouldn't be trying to talk to us about it. They're getting into the engineering stages of it and wanting us to locate lines and want maps of what size lines are where and things of that nature. So I think it's going to progress pretty quickly. It seems like it takes forever to get started. Once it gets started, it's just like all of a sudden it's finished, you know, but hopefully we're in the beginning stages on this project. We've certainly pushed for it on a regional level. We've had a lot of support from some of the other counties like Macon and the further north and eastern counties, Smith, have been very supportive of the project because it will affect them as well. They're looking at this as a regional, not just Trousdale County. And I think that's one reason it probably got moved up. And some of the things possibility of things going out of PowerCom, and that would help greatly in trying to entice them to be here. Yes, sir.
I was a kid when they started talking about expanding 52 and renovating it. Well, as you know, that only happened just a few years ago. So they do it. I guess finances has a lot to do with it. They don't get no hurry, and then sometimes there's so much involved in it, they can't get no hurry.
Like the mayor said, this is going to be a huge project. I mean, this bridge is one of the biggest bridge projects they've ever had. And it will be a benefit for many generations to come. It will be the one thing that will open up that end of our county more than anything that could ever be done to development, for sure. And I think we need to be proactive with the roads and infrastructure as much as we possibly can be to prepare for the growth that's inevitable out there, and to not run away from it and try to hide from it, but embrace it and guide it. And I think that's what we've been trying to do with this whole thing since it was kind of incepted. This goes back many years. You know that, you know, it's been talked about. I've talked to, I remember going and having a meeting with Commissioner Salzman and Governor Sundquist about it. I mean, it goes back that far. I mean, it was, it's been in the works for quite some time, and I'm glad to see it finally coming to, hopefully coming to some fruition. Mayor, have you got anything else for us?
At the Planning Commission on February 14th, I'm taking the sidewalk rehabilitation project. We put it in this year's budget in urban services. I worked with an engineering firm, and they recommended to do between the intersection here at Broadway and East Main up West Main to Littleton Street. They said that was the worst sections, so that'll be, right now it's proposed to do both sides. We have 32,000 remaining after engineering expenses. So we'll have to bid it out and see what the price comes in at. But right now that should be both sides, and it should be just a rehabilitation, a replacement of the existing sidewalk, making it ADA compliant. So I'm taking that in front of the planning commission and getting their feedback on it.
Have we had anything, any action lately on the bridge project over here, or our, shall we say, squatter?
We have now both physical and legal possession of the property. So we've locked it up at the advice of attorney to prevent looting. My understanding is it was pretty vacant already, but it has been locked up. And so we have possession, legal possession and physical possession of the property. I've reached out to TDEC, provided them all the documentation to show we have legal ownership of the property, excuse me, TDOT, and I haven't received any feedback. My understanding is they're dealing with a lot of several projects right now, but I am following up with them as on that project as well as the intersection out there to see what the latest status of that is. That building, which is at 201 Broadway, to do rehabilitation on that bridge, which one part of it they're wanting to fix the foundation of, and it shares a foundation with the building at 201 Broadway. They're going to tear that building down to access the bridge. They did originally want the state to acquire that as right of way, asked me if I had any problems with that. And I said, well, I was hoping we could turn that into a parking area to expand parking in downtown if you're going to tear it down. So they suggested they could do a construction easement, get a construction easement from the county. They would do their project. And when the construction is done, they could turn it back over to the county. And then we could do with it what we've wanted to do. My suggestion at this point, and of course, I'll take it to the planning commission and get feedback from them as well as commissioners here. I would suggest turning it into a parking lot because we have a severe lack of parking in downtown. So I think that'll be a great help. But again, I know it's a long-winded answer, but I'm still trying to follow up with them and see if we can get that process moving because they were very anxious a few months ago. And I don't know what the holdup is now, but I'm still reaching out to them.
I had sent you over some information a couple of times about, I know there's more grants available through fire for the volunteer fire department than maybe there has been in times past. Do you think there's anything there that we're going to be able to possibly be able to qualify for? There
is. I've talked to Jay Woodard, and we had got this information 2 or 3 weeks ago through other sources. One of the steps is he had to register our fire department as a state recognized fire department. I don't know if the paperwork had lapsed or whatnot, but he was going through getting that paperwork, and that's one of the eligibility requirements. And then after that, we're going to go through the application and try to submit something. So I do think we're certainly eligible for it because I think you have to have no more than 51% of your fire department can be full-time firefighters, in which 100% of ours are volunteers. So we obviously qualify there. So I think we're certainly eligible for it, and we're going to apply for any grants that we can for all of our emergency services.
What I've seen is so many times in the past, it seems like the volunteer departments were overlooked in any grants or funding from the state particularly. And I think in the last couple of years, maybe there's more money flowing now. They seem to have been addressing some of those things and giving us more opportunities on things of that nature. I know they're doing a stipend for volunteer firemen if they're certified or trained, and some things like that they haven't done in times past. Yes, sir, Mr. Ford.
Mayor, what is the status on the wall up Gravelly Hill that we've been talking about for 6 years?
My understanding is hopefully sometime in the next few weeks, Mr. Hawkins, who won the bid, should start construction on that. And I think he said it'll take about 2 weeks once they start. So they're hoping sometime, maybe the end of February, beginning of March. That was the last timeline I heard at the Highway Commission meeting.
It has been bid. They just want to be up there pouring concrete and chances of it freezing. So they're having to wait for the weather to, but I think he's looked at it and kind of knows, has a game plan, I guess, for lack of a better. So I'm pretty sure you will see it proceed very quickly this spring. Mr. Harsh?
Yes, up here at 231 and 25, that intersection is not, in my opinion, had enough caution lights on it in years past and is very dangerous. And now it's probably needs to have a traffic signal put there, a traffic light. At times it's backed up to Rankin Lane at rush hour on 231 and also sometimes it's backed up way past Keller's coming in there in the evening on rush hour. And would that be a state project? I know as far back as Mayor Carmen, they were going to do a count and see what the state recommended, but never really heard back from anything on that, or at least not recently.
I think it's getting worse exponentially, and when you get this new truck stop out there, it's going to really exacerbate things. I know you go through it, and then I do a lot as well. They did do the traffic study and the traffic count, and my information that we got, my remembrance of that, was that it was right at the cusp. It was close to needing that, but not quite there yet. And they had assured us that they would come back and analyze it again. I don't remember how many years they said, 2 years, 5 years, 3 years, but I do remember that they were supposed to come back and take a look at it at a later date. Now that's my remembrance on that, and that's probably from 5, 6 years ago. That sound about right?
So maybe it would be time to take another look at it. And these big trucks, with each one of them and every one of them stopping, it just walks the pavement down. They're constantly having to cut the pavement out, put it back in. It's expensive to the state to keep doing that.
Well, I think I think that probably they would be addressing anything there. I can't imagine them permitting this truck stop without addressing egress, ingress, and the intersection. So I guess best thing would be if we're talking with somebody at TDOT or we have a contact, is just try to mention that to them, bring it to their attention, see if we could get them to take another look at it. Probably be good to get Senator Hale on board with that, and possibly our new representative, whoever that may be. But yes, that probably that and the traffic light up here are two busiest intersections in the whole county, and certainly they need to have some attention. The one out here at Highway 10 will be addressed with this new project. You'll have a new clover leaf on that. Well, I say clover leaf, but there'll be an overpass type situation out there. So that little Highway 10 dead end thing won't exist once that road project is finished out there. So that'll kind of take care of that major intersection. And what's coming for this one, if we can get to the one out there, then that would probably have our traffic flow situation greatly improved across the county.
And Commissioner, I have reached out to TDOT about that, and they said we'd have to do a safety study on that. And I also spoke to my rural planning organization person about that, and we reached out to them. And of course, that was about the time COVID started, so that put everything behind, but they suggested we do a safety study out there. And one of the things that was mentioned, I don't know if it's an honest consideration or it's just something that was mentioned, was a roundabout, which is kind of the end thing right now for traffic planning. I told them I'd prefer it be a traffic light than a roundabout. I don't particularly like roundabouts, but that's the step. That's where we are at. I'm following up with TDOT on that to see if we can move that forward. Both our rural planning organization and actually GNRC, as they have part of the metro planning organization. They kept track of our traffic numbers on that and actually did some information on that, a proposal to TDOT about seeing growth on that side of the county as well. So it is in front of TDOT, and we'll make sure they follow up on it, and we begin the safety study as soon as possible, because we are growing. Everybody sees it. I actually did in kind of a preliminary interview with the Tennessean, asking us about growth and this kind of stuff. So it is something that we're definitely need, and hopefully that'll happen sooner than later.
Commissioners, y'all have anything else? Any questions for the mayor or myself or any issues like that, thank you for that, Mr. Harsh. That's the kind of thing we need to talk about in these meetings. So that we know that we have issues that need to be addressed and can work on them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
do have an update on one item. I think I'd mentioned previously that we're going to be doing an amendment to the state contract for Trousdale Turner, where they were going to give their employees a pay raise. It was going to be paid for by the state. We did get that contract today. Mr. Beller looked at it, said it met all the requirements, and given that it only changed the numbers and the pay for the employees out there, it wasn't any substantive change. He said he thought I could just go ahead and sign that, but let the commission know that that change was made. And that is going to increase the pay for Trousdale Turner Correctional Complex employees. That's what that was for. So any increase in their per diem that you're going to see going forward is strictly 100% pay raises for the employees and cannot go to any other purpose.
That's 100% paid by the state, of course. Do you know what the effect on the employee would be? Did they have any numbers? Is it $2 an hour, $4 an hour? What?
They did have some numbers, and I can send that to you. They got it on an Excel spreadsheet. And of course, it's separated between employees that have been there less than 12 months and employees more than 12 months. One of the positions I looked at, I think it was about a $9 increase with pay and benefits. It's about a $9 increase per hour.
So it's substantial.
It's very substantial. There's some positions that went from about $23 up to $31, $32.
I knew that they had been working on this for some time, and some of their other employees, clerical and whatnot, have been given raises, and they've been doing it as much as they could, I think, in-house, but they needed this to take it to the next level. So I'm glad to see that we've got that finally worked out. I'm going to be able to do that. Have we got the issue out there with trash, cardboard, all that worked out?
I believe they're working on it. There was a problem with, it's the equipment we don't maintain. We have nothing to do with it. We just empty the trash. It's actually done through a private company. We did have a meeting with the warden and the facility coordinator to let them know our concerns, and that if something didn't get done soon, we were going to stop servicing it because we were looking at our employees getting injured. So my understanding is they are making repairs to that, and it should be improving.
I know this may be early in the game, but are we beginning to think about where we would purchase land for the jail and justice center?
Yeah, the sheriff, there was one engineering company that kind of did a pro bono for the sheriff and looked at 3 different places and kind of ranked those. So we have looked at those, but again, that is part of the RFQ. There is a section in there that specifically says they will assist us with site choosing a site. It could be beyond those 3 that the sheriff just looked at. Just asked him if he had any ideas. He gave them 3 ideas. They looked at them. So there could be something beyond those 3, but that'll be something that engineering firm, once we have them in place, they'll look at what we need, and then we'll start assessing sites as we go forward. My initial thought is it's probably going to be somewhere off 25 because the infrastructure and everything's already in place.
Anybody have anything else? Do we have any public comments tonight? Anybody in the public like to make a comment, like to wave, like to smile, like to buy us a popsicle? Mr. Bryan.
I'll touch on something that the mayor had mentioned and you guys had discussed about parking in downtown industrial development. Had talked about this as well. Completely agree with the mayor that we believe our community is on the precipice of some commercial and economic growth in the downtown area. So parking is something that we need to think about, and it needs to be, we need to kind of get ahead of the curve if we can. So I completely agree with his idea of making the place on the river public parking, because when we have events right there on the corner, like the cakewalk and stuff, it would be hugely convenient for people to be able to park over there and facilitate more events. The other thing is I had this suggestion, we kind of kicked this around, but something to ponder and discuss is the old playground in front of the daycare directly across from the gym right here. I think Mr. Taylor is using it for storage, but in the building, but the lot would be perfect for a parking lot. And it would service downtown restaurants for tradesmen who have trailers. They can't come in and park, they can't eat. You know, so these restaurants are failing to capture some of our local construction people because they don't have a place to park. So something to consider is it's possible we could lease, purchase that lot, or even trade him for the lot behind his building that we were talking about repaving. I don't know which of those are applicable scenarios, but you have a perfect location right here that we could use that would really help any further downtown businesses that would come alive. We have a lot of construction, plumbers, electricians, tradesmen that are pulling trailers and they just don't have a place to park. So something to consider.
Brian, what I wanted to ask you was, other than the people out there that's putting in the caps for guns, bullets, whatever, down them, do we have any other prospective companies wanting to come in to maybe serve whatever?
So far as industrial and manufacturing, not a lot. But you know, the industrial development has sort of veered off a little bit into more of commercial and retail activities with our engagement with Retail Strategies out of Birmingham. And I don't know if it's my imagination or not, but I think we're seeing a remarkable amount of interest in Hartsville that I personally was not aware of before. So either I'm just coming to the party realizing what's going on, or we're really starting to get a lot of interest, because I know the mayor is getting a lot of contacts and he shares those. I don't think they're available for public knowledge just yet, because they're still just kind of dipping their toes in the water, and these companies kind of like to keep their nose down until they know. But we have maybe a half a dozen businesses that are sniffing us to put here in retail and commercial. And as far as manufacturing, the Patriot project is moving forward. His project is clipping along very well. He told me that he was looking to break ground in the first quarter of this year. I'd be tickled to death if he broke ground by summer, but I think he's moving along fairly well. And that's the only industrial and manufacturing business that I'm aware of that is really centering in, but we're getting a lot of commercial
What about
interest,
retail?
a lot of retail, and I'm saying commercial, but retail business. So it's entirely possible that if any of these land, you know, our citizens will have a lot more choices, places to eat, places to shop, places to do business locally, and it would decrease that leakage report that we saw that Retail Strategies presented us, $140 million a year that is going outside of our county in commercial sales. So if we just capture some small part of that, it would not only make our citizens happier, but it would make all of us happier by, you know, diversifying our revenue streams and it not being quite so dependent and burdensome on property taxes to fund the budget. We can increase our sales taxes and our commercial property taxes and create a few jobs, man. It'd be a huge win for us. So yes, we're seeing a lot of activity. We're seeing a lot of activity. They made us know that Hartsville really wasn't on the internet commercially. So these guys these days, they're sitting in some ivory tower in New York or wherever these franchise headquarters are, and they just thumb through the internet looking for locations. They don't drive around like they used to. If you're not on the internet, they don't know you exist. Well, Retail Strategies has put us on the internet, and now we're starting to get a lot of activity, and some of it is gone directly to the mayor, and he has shared that, and they're working with these prospective companies. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of activity. There's been several properties here in town that have changed hands, which is a good sign because new owners are more likely to reinvigorate them or try to do some sort of return on them, as opposed to the older owners who just let them sit stagnant. So I think there may be as many as 3 local buildings. And I've been in conversations this week with an investor who is sniffing around buying 1 or 2 buildings here in town. as an investment to, and not to let them sit vacant, but to get them fixed up and rent or, potentially resell in the future. Because this investor also senses that we're on the precipice of a property surge, a property value surge in our retail area. So I'm excited personally, really. We're going in the right direction, it seems like. Small steps, but the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. King. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Anything else? And since Mr. Walsh is not going here, what are we going to do? Mr. Ford makes a motion to adjourn. And Mr. Taylor makes a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sit here the rest of the night. We are adjourned.